Hello, my name is Val and I am an assessor here at Silex Regulation. As we have now moved to accepting online work-based learning applications, we thought it might be helpful to give you some tips on submitting your portfolio to ensure that it is of a satisfactory standard. So we'll go to the first tip, which is in the manner in which you save your documents. If you can try and save the documents, both the logbook sheets and the evidence, as PDFs, that's very helpful. Preferably saving the logbook sheet first, followed by the corresponding evidence for that logbook sheet. Can you ensure that any emails that you are submitting are first copied and pasted and saved as PDF before you send them to us? Please don't send any direct links. And when you are copying that evidence, can you make sure you still have the sender, the recipient, and the date on those emails, please, for authenticity purposes. Another tip is to save the document as one document. So all the logbook sheets and all the evidence in one document. However, there is a proviso here that the document should not be more than 10 GB. So if you are finding it difficult and if it is going over that, then feel free to break your portfolio down into competencies. So there are 8 competencies, so therefore you should have 8 documents that comprise of to make your portfolio. And then just label them as competency 1, competency 2, competency 3. Talking about labelling, going forward, just try and keep it simple as possible. We don't need any descriptions. If you are sending your portfolio as just one PDF document, you can save it as WBL portfolio. If you're breaking it down into competency, so each document is a competency, then just save it as competency 1, competency 2, etc. If you are unable to save it in that manner and you are having to save one logbook sheet followed by the evidence as one PDF, then just save it as outcome 1.1 and in the brackets put either 1 or 2, reflecting if it's example 1 or example 2. And we appreciate some people may have difficulty in saving it that way. So if you are sending your portfolio as separate documents, so a document for the logbook sheet and a separate document for the evidence, I've just put on the slide there how we would like it to be labelled, please. So in brackets is the example, so it would be the 1 or 2. And then another tip is to draw your attention to the standard that we expect from applicants. Now, the week-by-week schedule has been put on our website, and it was compiled to assist applicants to put the portfolio together. Now, what you will find in the week-by-week schedule is clear guidance on what is expected to meet each outcome. So there's a section for each outcome. And you will also, within that section, find past accepted examples to demonstrate that standard that we require for each of those outcomes. So you might find it beneficial to review them just to make sure that what you're submitting is of a similar standard. Now, when considering these examples online, focus on the principles of the outcome rather than trying to identify ones which are in your area of work, because the principles are universal, and whichever area of law that you may work in, you should be able to meet the outcomes. Another source that would be helpful, I think, for you is to look at the Fellowship Work-Based Learning Handbook, which can also be found on the website. Pages 17 to 24 are look at the actual outcomes themselves. And what you'll find here are bullet points for each outcome, and it just explains what you need to meet the outcome. What you could do is use these bullet points to structure your logbook sheet. And therefore it just means that you're not actually missing anything, and hopefully you should have provided everything to meet the outcome if you address each of those bullet points. If you are still struggling to meet the outcomes after reading all the guidance, then you should discuss this with your supervisor in the first instance, because they may be able to assist you or guide you in what kind of examples you could possibly use to help compile your portfolio. And the next tip is about the logbook sheets themselves. So the logbook sheet template you can find on our website. It's in a Word document, so it should be easy to fill in. The main tip is just ensure that each box is fully completed. Refer clearly to the evidence that you are providing. So cross-reference, if you have page numbers, cross-reference the page numbers. If your evidence is following on from your logbook sheet, if you can, as detailed in the logbook sheet, letter to whoever it went to, and then the date, it just means that we can ensure we're looking at the right evidence. As I just mentioned previously, try and follow the bullet points from the handbook to ensure that you provide a comprehensive example and explanation of how your evidence meets the outcome. You and your supervisor do not need to sign the logbook sheets, as we will obtain electronic signatures once you submit your application. But what you still need to do is to write the name of the supervisor that supervised that piece of work that you are producing. Now, if there is more than one, it becomes important to make sure that you do write down the name of the correct supervisor. And when you submit your application to us, within the covering email, please write and provide the email addresses for each of the supervisors that has supervised your work in your portfolio. And if you could clearly state the examples, so was it outcome 1.1 or 1.2 that they supervised, and then we will email them and correspond with them to obtain signatures. Now the next tip is around the evidence point. You need to ensure that you read the outcome carefully and ensure that your evidence demonstrates what is required by the outcome. So for example, outcome 1.1 is apply the law to a matter. So you must ensure within your evidence we can see that you are applying law, so that's case law, statute, and you are applying it to a matter, specific matter, case that you're dealing with. I would also like to draw your attention here to competency 5. Competency 5 is about your business and organisation and not your client. So it's important that you ensure that your evidence reflects that, and what you write in your logbook sheet reflects that. If you do work in-house, then it's slightly different for you because your business and organisation is technically your client as well. So we would accept anything to do with your business and organisation as meeting that outcome. The next point is ensure you provide all the evidence that you rely upon within your logbook sheet. So for example, outcome 3.5 is take action to deal with instructions received. So it's twofold. So we need to have evidence of the instructions you received, and then have evidence to demonstrate what you did to deal with those instructions. So for example, an email from the client asking them to proceed to exchange of contracts, and then the telephone note or the contract demonstrating that you exchanged contracts and that you did something to deal with those instructions. Again, I would bring your attention here to the week-by-week guidance. It clearly explains what the outcome requires you to do, and also advises of what evidence is required. So please have a look and see how to ensure that your portfolio matches that similar standard of meeting the outcomes. For any further guidance or to obtain any of the documents I've spoke about, if you visit the Silex regulation website, and there is a tab, I am an applicant, that section should take you to the relevant documents that I've mentioned here today. If you have any specific questions, then please email info@silexregulation.org.uk. and we will try and come back to you. Can you please ensure that your email has as much information as required, has a lot of the background, so that we can give you a full answer in response. I hope you found that helpful, that presentation helpful, and best of luck with your application.